There are a lot of strong opinions and a lot of advice that gets thrown around to aspiring indie devs, and some of it is just flat out wrong. The indie game dev online scene is a mishmash of a whole bunch of different developers with different aspirations, goals, and experience levels, and they all have opinions and advice to give, myself included. Welcome, I'm Brandon, and today we're going to look at the 5 lies and misconceptions you've been told about game dev. Number 1, do not start by making your dream game. This one seems almost unanimous. I see this one everywhere online. I'm pretty sure I've even said it myself on this channel as well. So let me tell you why I've come around and changed my mind on this one. It can be summed up with a very simple statement. If you've never failed at anything, then you've never done anything. The advice do not start by making your dream game is obviously targeted to newer game developers because we're talking about starting. But the problem with this advice is it's coming from developers who already understand why you shouldn't start by making your dream game. If you have made that mistake yourself already, which I did with my first project, Veil of Maya, the answer is very clear to you. I don't have the resources or the skills or the time to be able to make that project in a reasonable time frame. I understand that on a very deep level now. It is a crappy realization, and it hits you in the face like a pile of bricks, but it's something you're never going to forget, and now you will scope your projects more appropriately in the future. The devs who are telling the aspiring devs to not make their dream game, it's very, very similar to parents who are trying to teach their kid every trick in the book to not fall off their bike the first time they ride it. It's just not going to work. I do believe that experts can teach beginners things that will save them time, pain, and mistakes, but I just don't think that this is one of those things. New developers are going to come into the indie scene with a game that they loved from their past, and they want to create something that's going to make other people feel what they felt when they played those games they loved. And that game is probably their dream game, and it's probably really big in scope. There's just so much passion. It is hard to listen to reason when there's that much passion involved. So I am of the rare opinion that you should try to make your dream game when you first start. You're either going to succeed, which is awesome, or you're not, you're going to fail, and you're going to learn some really valuable lessons from that failure. Number 2, pick the right genre. You can do a whole bunch of research, and for example, you might find that puzzle games historically don't financially do as well as some other genres. Or you might discover that it's really hard to make a 2D platformer that earns you any money. I see a lot of blanket statements get thrown out there like that online. So here's what I have to say to that. Take any genre that you think is a bad genre, and you will find a super successful game in that genre that is indie. There is a sea of platformers out there, and I'm sure that a lot of them are junk. But Celeste came out of nowhere and blew all the other platformers out of the water. If you think puzzle games don't do well, just take a look at Baba Is You. It's not even a pretty game, not a little bit. If you're going to websites like gamealytic.com and you're looking through different genres and looking at the numbers like median revenue, that is not a good way to pick what game you should make. That is what investors would have you do if you were running a AAA company. Indies are special, and the AAA industry is going through a rough time right now. I think that the indie scene is actually going to continue to climb in the coming years, and I think a big part of that reason is because indies are coming into the scene with a lot of passion. These are developers that want to give people amazing experiences or invoke emotions out of people. Yes, your game is a product, and if you're not trying to earn revenue, then you're doing yourself and gamers a disservice. Because if you don't make enough money, you're not going to be able to do this sustainably. But I do believe that if you give enough love and attention to the experience of your game, the money will follow. If you are starting by following the money and making a game from there, I think it's going to be a crappy experience and the money's not going to come. I want to thank Codex, the sponsor for this video. After playing with their tool for just 15 minutes, I decided to migrate our plans for our game Samurado over to this system. Codex is the ultimate project management tool for devs because it's created by game developers specifically for game developers. The main reason I love it so much is because it manages to show you all the information you need to know without overwhelming you. The design makes sure of it because you organize all your tasks into cards that go into decks. But you can keep today's or this week's tasks, for example, in your hand. You can assign task priorities, give an effort rating, which makes it really easy to choose what you should work on next. But the power of this tool really stands out when you use it with a team. You can see who's working on what, mark a card for review, or even notify your team if you're blocked and ping people who you think can help. You can create milestones with due dates so your whole team knows where you're going at a glance. But one of the coolest things is Decky. This is a Discord bot that allows you to engage with your Discord community by collecting feature requests, ideas, and bug reports directly within your Discord server. And it'll keep fans in the loop by sharing what you're working on. Check the link in the description to get 30% off your first 3 months on the Codex Pro plan. Number 3, do not watch tutorials. This is a pretty extreme view that I see from time to time, and it's not helping anyone. Go read the documentation might be good advice for a computer science major, or someone that already has a decade of programming experience, who actually understands the ins and outs of what they're looking at. But to someone like me who is completely self-taught, and I know a lot of other indies and aspiring indies are this way as well, then this advice is not helpful. It's especially unhelpful when you're brand new. The documentation doesn't mean anything to you if you don't at least have a little bit of fundamental knowledge of programming. But I do think that the intention behind this advice is very good, and it's because many new developers fall into what we call tutorial hell. I remember it really well. It lasted 2 years for me. I followed tutorial after tutorial. I even watched them in my spare time, even if I didn't have a computer in front of me, hoping that eventually, if I just soaked up enough of this information, that I would start to understand how to make games, and I would eventually be able to do it myself. So on the surface, it might seem like a good idea to avoid tutorial hell is to just avoid tutorials. But I think if you do that, you are shooting yourself in the foot, because tutorials are not the problem. Using tutorials as a crutch is a problem. Tutorials, combined with enough experimentation and other forms of research, is going to accelerate your learning. Use them. With lessons and how-to videos, you're going to see how other developers approach problems, but they will hinder you if you rely too much on them. They need to be balanced very heavily with experimentation, because if you're not also trying to do things on your own, then none of it's going to stick, and your confidence will never go up, which is how people get stuck in tutorial hell in the first place. Tutorial hell is a confidence problem. It's not a knowledge problem. Real quick, if you're enjoying the video, then thank you if you drop a like or a comment. Number 4, you have to have a hook. I feel pretty strongly that this is just not true. You don't have to do anything. My top 5 indie titles that I can think up off the top of my head are Hollow Knight, Stardew Valley, Ori and the Will of the Wisps, Hades, and Vampire Survivors. None of those games did anything that's never been done before. None of them had any weird twists or genre mashups. Vampire Survivors stands out to me the most because I had never played another game like it. But it was not the first of its kind. It was inspired by Magic Survival, and they look pretty similar to me. I think the wisdom behind the advice of using a hook gets lost in translation. So I'll say it this way. You do not need a hook to make a commercially successful game, but a good hook will make it potentially more likely that people are either going to talk about your game or remember your game after they are done playing it. That's it. It's marketability, which is a very good thing for your game. I think most indie developers are just trying to find statistically the most likely way that they will find financial success while they do something that they love. And a hook can help you with that. I would argue that a bad hook, or a hook that's just too weird, might be a bit of a turnoff for people that just want a solid gaming experience. Quality will always beat gimmicks. Go and look at the most wishlisted games on Steam. They are not there because of gimmicks. They are there because of their ridiculously high level of quality. But again, a good hook will make your game more marketable. So make sure if you are using a hook to test it with your player base to ensure that it's having the effect that you want it to have. Number 5, devlogs are for the wrong audience. I understand where this advice is coming from. Devlogs are primarily watched by people who are interested in development themselves. So how is this any better than Wishlist Wednesday on Twitter, where you wishlist someone else's game and they're basically just wishlisting your game in return? It feels like they're the same, but they're not, for 2 reasons. 1, I promise you that it is not just developers that watch devlogs. And I know that because I watched them long before I was a developer myself. Yes, I was interested in becoming a developer, but I wasn't one, and I had no hope of learning how to do game dev at the time. And I have talked to other people that watch devlogs that are not indie developers. They are out there. But what's more important to note is that the devlogs that I watched, I bought those games when they came out, and I enjoyed them. Number 2, indie games are also gamers. There is a massive bubble of people that are just gamers, but inside this bubble is another smaller bubble called indie developers. They're still gamers. They just also make games. People love the process of creation. They always have and they always will. And people also love stories. So if you make a devlog that tells a compelling story, or it really hones in on your creative process, as long as you can keep it accessible, people are going to love it. And some of those people will fall in love with your game as well. I feel strongly enough about this last point that I have actually made an entire video on why indie developers should be making devlogs. And it's right here if you want to check it out. Thanks for watching. Bye.